Hello Mules, welcome back to MuleSoft-TechZone. I know that I haven't been posting any videos because I have a series of videos that are going to come. So you might have seen my sessions for MuleSoft for beginners. So those sessions are for those who are new to MuleSoft or people who don't have any technology experience or coding experience. But if at all you are watching these videos, I would suggest this is only for people who has experience already on MuleSoft. Okay, if not, please go through the beginners videos first, and then after completion and after doing MCD level 1 certification, then you can start coming to advanced users training. So this is more specific to clear MCD level 2 exam or to understand more than certification. I always prefer that you understand the concepts first. Certification is a secondary thing, but understanding the concepts is very important. So today I'm going to start with the topic 1, Maven and Pom. In beginner session, again, if you have watched my videos, I have explained a very few small things about Pom.xml, what is Pom, or very basic things, right? We just created a project, but I haven't explained more things about Pom or Maven. So now I am going to explain you in detail about these topics. So without wasting time, let's get started. So the first thing that I would like to tell you is, what is Maven? So if you don't know what is Maven, it is just a open source tool which helps to build, publish, deploy the projects. Basically, no matter how small or large, all applications must undergo a specific series of processes, such as generating the code or compiling the source code, these kind of steps. So developers usually they manually configure these processes, but it's a time consuming burden, right? So Maven help us to solve this issue. So as I said, Maven is an open source tool which is used to build, publish, deploy the projects for better project management. Maven uses convention over configuration. What does it mean? So which means the developers are not required to create build process themselves. Developers do not have to mention each and every configuration detail. Then who will be providing that, right? Maven provides that. So Maven provide default behavior for projects. When a Maven project is created, Maven creates default project structure. That's what you have seen when you created a new Mule project. I'm talking now only specific to Mule, but Maven is not confined only to MuleSoft. It is an open source tool for different language. You might be seeing Maven for Java, for Python, everywhere. Okay. So now when a project Maven project is created, it creates a default project structure. In our case, it creates a Pom.xml, source main resources, etc. Right? The developer is only required to place your files accordingly, and he or she need not to define any kind of configuration in Pom.xml. So basic structure of Pom.xml will be there. You can edit them, but a basic structure of Pom.xml is always there. So let us see what a build life cycle of a Maven, right? So it start with validate. So these things are, again, these are important for certification purpose and also for you to know better, right? So the first life cycle phase is validate. So what does it do? It validate the project if at all it is correct and all necessary information is available or not. For example, if there are some elements or tags, again, elements and tags are one and the same, so don't get confused. Okay, it will check whether all information is provided or not. The second thing that happens is compile. So it compiles the source code of your project. What is the next step? Test. So it tests the compiled source code using a suitable unit testing framework. In our case, it could be like munits, right? So it will test the suitable unit testing framework, and these tests should not require the code be packaged or deployed. So to test, you don't have your application to be packaged or deployed, right? So because we have our very next step, which is called as package. So this package, it take the compiled code and package it in as a distributable format. For example, in our case in MuleSoft, it is a jar file. So whenever you are seeing a jar file, that means it has successfully packaged. Basically, it is like a distributable format where we can use it for further steps. So what is the next step? It is to verify. So now you are going in this phase, you are going to verify, like Maven is going to verify any checks on the result of your integration tests to ensure whether you have met the criteria or not. For example, if you have some sonar cube that is involved for some kind of validations or something, it will check the criteria. What is the next step? This is very important step. Install. You might have seen Maven space install, ambient space install. So basically this install is this install the package into your local repository for use a dependency in other projects locally. So basically it will start installing. Okay, and the last step is to deploy your application. So once the build environment is done, it copies the final package to the remote repository for sharing with other developers or projects. When I say remote repository, it can be like any other tool where you can find where it is available for everyone. For example, Nexus repository. So you must store this particular jar file somewhere, right, to access. So basically people will use a shared location for that, or people will use Nexus repository, or you will be having your own company's repository. So basically this is the build life cycle. So you have, it starts with validate, then compile, then test, package, verify, install, and deploy. So what's next? Pom.xml, right? So let's discuss about Pom.xml. It stands for Project Object Model. It is an XML file that resides in your base directory of the project as pom.xml, right? So you can see in the like for example, you can see some kind of pom.xml is generated when you are creating a project, right? So basically this pom contains information about the project and various configuration details used by Maven to build the project. So the objective of pom.xml is to have the information about the project and all the configuration details, which helps to build the project. It also contains the goals and plugins. Okay, so while executing a task or a goal, so what happens is Maven looks for pom in your project directory. It reads the pom and gets the needed information it needs, and then executes this goal is like to deploy or whatever it is, or building, right? So before creating a pom, we should first decide the project group. Okay, so basically project group means group id and its name, its artifact id, and its versions will help. Versioning will always help uniquely identifying the project in the repository. So basically it looks something like this. All right, so basically this is a basic pom.xml, which is an xml format which starts with project as a root tag. Okay, you can see group id, artifact id, these two are very important for your pom.xml. Okay, it should be noted that there should be a single pom file for each project. Without that we cannot consider it as a mavenized project. All right, so if you see here, there is something called built-in plugins, build plugins. So what are these build plugins? I will show you in the example when you created a project how build plugin shows. But these build plugins, these are used to execute during the build process, not the deploy process. During the build process, as the name itself shows, build, right? And it should be configured inside the build element of pom.xml. Again, element or tag, both are same, one and the same. So basically what is this Maven clean plugin? You will be seeing when you created a sample project, you must be seeing Maven clean plugin inside a build tag. So basically this Maven clean plugin, what it does is it clears or it deletes, it removes the files that are generated at the build time in the projects directory. Project directory means project folder. If you don't, you might not see in the Anypoint Studio, but if you go to the folder root folders in the explorer, file explorer, you might see. So basically first it will clean everything and start building it. Okay, whatever existing files are there, it will all remove it with the help of this Maven clean plugin. Next thing is Mule Maven plugin. This is really important. You have to understand this concept very clearly. It is very simple. Basically, Mule Maven plugin is built for MuleSoft related projects. Okay, though it is still a Maven plugin which is specifically used for Mule related projects. So what is this, right? It will enable you to integrate the packaging and deployment of your Mule applications with your Maven lifecycle. So basically we are trying to use Maven lifecycle to deploy or to package and deploy your Mule applications. So Mule Maven plugin can be only used for Mule applications, not for Java applications. You cannot put that inside a Java application, right? So these Mule applications are basically packaged into deployable jar file. I'm talking about Mule 4 version. It is a jar file that you can later deploy to a running Mule runtime engine. So when you are a beginner, you might have seen when you have right clicked and deployed the project on local, you can see some build success, right? That is where, it is creating a jar file for you and deployed. You can see the status as deployed. That means after creating, after packaging, it will deploy. So who is doing all this process? The Mule Maven plugin is doing this process. So you have to be aware of this thing. So basic, as a basic beginner developer, you might not know what Mule Maven plugin is doing, but this is what it does. So basically the package, the jar file, the package contains the application and all its dependencies. We will see what is dependencies in the coming slides, but this is what Mule Maven plugin does. Next, again, and this Mule Maven plugin is compatible with our runtime Mule runtime engine, which is enterprise edition, and with the Mule kernel for community edition. So it is compatible. So basically it is developed by Maven, but it is compatible for Mule applications. Using this Mule Maven plugin, you can automate your Mule application deployments to either CloudHub, CloudHub 2.0, or Anypoint Runtime Fabric, or on-premise. So this Mule Maven plugin is developed in such a way that it helps us to deploy all our applications into all different types of deployment strategies. All right. So basically, what Mule Maven has is it has 4 goals. First is packaging. Okay, what is meant by packaging? As we have discussed in the previous slides, it generates the jar file of your project. Next is deploy. Once the jar file is generated, then only we can deploy. We cannot directly deploy the application. A jar file has to be generated, which is called packaging. Then we start, it automatically uploads. So what does this goal does? Deploy. So it automatically uploads and start your application in any application targets. Like it can be runtime, it can be runtime fabric, it can be CloudHub, it can be on-premise. So there is another thing called Mule deploy. Okay, how is it different from other deploys? It deploys an artifact from the specified location. You can specify the location. In that way, it will take from that location and deploy it. Deploy will automatically deploy from it will automatically upload the jar file. But if you want somewhere you want to pick a jar file from specified location, you have to use Mule deploy. What is Mule undeploy? It's very simple. Automatically it will remove your application from any of the application targets. When I say goals, these are like different commands that we are going to use to perform some actions. That is what goals means, right? So let us see the commands what are used here. So for packaging, right, what we can do is mvn space package. Okay, and also like you can also use like uh, basically you can also use mvn clean install, all those stuff as well, the commands. So basically the package goal generates the jar file. As I said, this goal binds by default to the Maven lifecycle package. Okay, so if for example, if there is, you can pass any number of arguments by having a prefix -d. D is like you are passing some parameters to it. When I say attach mule resources, it is the value of this can be a boolean, like either true or false. You can say mvn space package space -d attach mule resource equal to true. When I say equal to true, it attaches the source code inside the generated jar file. Okay, so, and then deploy. What is deploy? So this goal uploads and deploy the application, as I said before. And you can see -d mule deploy. -d again, it is I can say like a terminology that we are asking Maven that we are passing some parameters. Please consider it. For example, you don't have db.password in your property files, for example db.password. But if you want to pass it during the runtime or build time, what you can also do is you can pass it through commands -d db.password equal to, you can give the value. So Mule deploy is nothing but it will instruct this Mule Maven plugin to deploy using the deployment strategy defined in the plugin configuration. I will show you where this plugin configuration is there. If at all this Mule deploy parameter is not set, the plugin will upload the artifacts to the repository defined in the distribution management section of the Pom.xml. Okay, so this is very important. If you want to deploy, you have to mention it. You have to mention this particular tag. All right. So next, what is Mule deploy? So this goals, as I said, it enables you to deploy an artifact without building it. That is very important. For example, to specify the artifact's location, you can also use like -d mule dot artifact, where you can specify where your jar is there. For example, you have a jar already. Okay, for the first time, what you need to do, you need to generate a jar file, right? So for that, you have to use the deploy, the second goal. But if you have a jar already where you don't need any build, then you can use this mule colon deploy, and you can specify the location of the jar because there is no jar that we are generating, right? So that is the difference between deploy and mule deploy. Deploy, it will build and create a jar file and then deploy. But mule deploy, you will, if you have a jar file already existing, then you can simply use mule deploy instead of, if you just again use deploy, right, it will start building again and again. And Mule undeploy, it's very simple. It will undeploy the application no matter what, whether it is deployed using deploy command or Mule undeploy command. Okay, so next, let us see what are shared libraries. Again, I am not going very deep into shared libraries concept, but it is always good to know about shared libraries concept. So shared libraries are nothing but this enables you to configure a dependency in your application and make this dependency accessible to the all the connectors in your application. For example, if there is some class specific to some MySQL database connector, and that particular class has to be accessed by other connectors, for example HTTP REST connector or any other connector. In such case, if you want it to be made accessible for other connectors, you have to mention that particular dependency, that particular library under shared library tag. Okay, so to configure a dependency as a shared library, we always use shared libraries tag, okay, which is inside your Mule Maven plugin configuration in your Pom.xml. I will also show you that whenever we are adding that, right? And for more info, you can always go to this, about class loading isolation. This is very deep topic, so you can give a small read, but in short, if you want the dependency of your connector to be accessible by other connectors, you will use shared libraries. And coming to additional plugin dependency, how to add additional plugin dependency. So this, what it does, configuring additional plugin dependencies for a connector in your application, it will make only those dependencies available for only that connector. So it is an opposite of shared libraries. Okay, additional plugins and shared libraries are mutually exclusive. In shared libraries, it is made accessible to other connectors. Here it is not made available for other connectors. Doing this, it will enable you to configure different dependencies or even multiple versions of the same dependencies for different connectors. For example, if you have MySQL of like 1.8.0 version, you can mention multiple versions also, 1.9. For example, Oracle, you have multiple versions. In that case, you can use additional plugin dependency. So to configure this, again, you will be adding a tag called additional dependency inside your Mule Maven plugin configuration under Pom.xml. So everything what we are talking about in the XML terms is under Pom.xml. For more information, again, you can refer to the same website. So basically, I always suggest not my videos, not any other videos. docs.mulesoft.com is the best source of learning. All right. Coming to next topic. So what are dependencies? I can say like we can call it as elements or tags or whatever. As a beginner, right, your developer, you might have seen whenever you are dragging and dropping a connector in your Mule canvas, there is a dependency automatically added into your Pom.xml. You might have noticed dependencies tag, but you don't really know what are dependencies. So basically this contains a list of dependency tags. So inside dependencies there are multiple dependency tags. So what are they doing, right? So basically what they are doing is, each dependency is supposed to have at least two tags. One is group ID and artifact ID. uh, so this group ID and artifact ID are responsible to download a external library. So it is nothing but you are required to use the external libraries. Okay, so it should be mentioned inside the dependency tag. This tag contains a list of dependency, as I said, and each dependency is supposed to have these two tags. Okay, and coming to repositories tag. This is another tag that you might have seen in your pom.xml quite often, right? So Maven provides the concept of remote repository. That is nothing but our repositories. So which is developers owned custom repository containing required libraries or other project jars. For example, so you can see, like, whenever you are dragging and dropping HTTP connector or database connector, do you know that they are just existing like that? No. At the back end those are some libraries, okay, which are present in some remote repository. For example, we have a repository called exchange, right, where you can find all the connectors. So basically we will be mentioning anypoint exchange repositories and anypoint exchange urls and all under this repositories, because our libraries are like http connector or basic all connectors, those are stored in those repositories. Okay, so basically we are downloading from that particular website, right? And how dependencies basically are fetched, right? When we are executing this maven build commands, for example maven space install, when you're doing this, maven will start looking for dependency libraries, but there is a sequence. What is that sequence? So first thing is, first it will search the dependency in the local repository. When I say local repository, for example, you are running an application on your local, you might be installing maven. You will be seeing under users, under your profile there is m2 repository, where there can be, like, if you are using for the first time, it will start downloading the dependency. But if you have already used, you can see the dependencies are already downloaded, and it will search first in the local repository. If it is not found, what will happen? Then it will search in the central repository. When I say central repository, there is, like, for example, MuleSoft has a central repository, Anypoint Exchange. Okay, it will search there. If it is found there, it will download it. Even if it is not present in central repository, for example you are trying to download for example you want to use edit some pdf text, so you are using some java code in MuleSoft, and you need some itext library, for example. So that is not present in any point exchange, that is not a MuleSoft library, it is some external library. So what it will do, it will search the dependencies in the remote repository. If it is found, then it will be downloaded to your local repository first, okay, for future reference. So once it is downloaded, it will be there in your local repository, and then from the next time when it starts, when you are trying to deploy again for the second time, it will not download again and again, it is already downloaded and it will reuse. So this is a series of sequence. This is very important step or important thing that you need to understand, how really dependencies are downloaded, right? And please note that this plugin repo, there will be some another tag called plugin repositories. Like, plugin repositories and repositories are almost one and the same, except that it inherits the behavior of a plugin. Okay, so now coming to next topic, how to include common modules in your pom.xml. You might have seen that you have like common dot error handling, common dot logging. You are creating some common modules already. Again, if you are an advanced user of MuleSoft, you will understand this concept. If you are a new user, beginner, you will not be able to understand. In your real-time projects, you have some common modules that you wanted to involve into your project, because there is no need for you to create error handling again and again. You can create one error handling. Once you publish that to exchange, you might start, that is readily available to use it by other applications. So how to include it? You can add this reusable module or application or template, whatever you call, by adding the dependency element. So for example, this is how it looks. So it is a normal dependency tag which has group id, artifact id, version of your connector or template. Classifier should always be mentioned as mule-plugin. Even if you see http connector or database connector, when you drag and drop the classifier is like you're classifying what kind of dependency it is. Okay, as it is a mule template and or mule module, it comes under mule plugin classifier. This is really important in terms of exam. They might have ask you like what is the classifier. This is really important to understand. All right, so coming back now, how to deploy your Mule applications in various deployment strategies, right? You are deploying your application on local without adding any of the configurations which I'm going to show you, because you're not deploying somewhere in cloud or on-prem or RTF. You're deploying on your local. So you must have not seen these kind of plugins on your Pom.xml. But what if your application has to be deployed into different kind of strategies like CloudHub, RTF, or on-premise using Mule Maven plugin? So all these are related. So deploying your application to different deployment strategies using Mule Maven plugin. For that, you need to configure the deployment strategy in your pom.xml, so that what it will do, it will help us to deploy, redeploy, or undeploy your Mule application using Mule Maven plugin. That is what DevOps team does, right? So basically DevOps team configure all these things. So it is an automation process. We do automation. It's not that we are right clicking, deploying our application on local, copy the jar file and go do that. No, we are advanced. We are going for production readiness. So it has a process. For that process, we are doing this kind of stuff. So you will be seeing a plugin element, which I will be showing in the next slides. Inside a plugin element in your pom.xml, configure your type of deployment and replace the placeholder values with your type of deployment strategy information, whatever you have. I'll show you one example here. So for example, deploy a Mule application into CloudHub 1.0 version. For example, take deployment strategy as CloudHub 1.0 version. So here, this is the Mule Maven plugin that you can see, right? So this is the plugin information that you need to include in your pom.xml. Here you can see there is a tag. So inside plugin there is a configuration. So configuration tab is configuration element is very important to include this. When you are creating new Mule project, you won't be able to see this configuration tag because that is you are deploying on local, but now you want to deploy this into some CloudHub 1.0 using Mule Maven plugin. So in such case, you will be using CloudHub deployment as this, and you can see some information. In the previous slide, I asked you to fill in the information, all this Mule version, username, password, application name, environment. So all this, like I have used dollar of symbol. That means you are passing this value somewhere through Jenkins or some other any CI/CD platform, right? So this is how it looks, right? And how about deploying your application into CloudHub 2.0? Okay, it is very important to note that the distribution management, you have to use v3 version only. CloudHub 2.0 deployment strategy, you have to use Anypoint exchange of Maven of v3 version. That is really important to start with. Okay, in CloudHub 1.0 it supports v2 and v3 both, but CloudHub 2.0 it supports only v3. So coming to the plugin configuration, you can see a slight change in the name of CloudHub deployment. Here we are using CloudHub 2 deployment. CloudHub 2, you can see number 2 there, which is different from CloudHub 1.0. And you can see there are the information is quite different. In the previous we have seen number of workers, vCore and all. Here we call it as replicas, secure properties. So what is this secure properties does? Again, there are a lot of confusions whether it is masks or it will encrypt. So basically this secure property tag will instruct CloudHub 2.0 to encrypt the values before storing them. Basically, when you are building, whatever values are there in property values, it will store basically, right? But having this secure properties tag, it will store the values in an encrypted format. Many of them think like, it will be masking the values. No, that is wrong. It is actually encrypting the values. Okay, so these two things are really important in exam perspective or in your real-time use case. Okay, so coming back to runtime fabric, this is also one and the same. Only thing is like, the information and the root tag inside configuration, runtime fabric deployment, and you have to fill in all this information. You can find all this information in docs.mulesoft.com, but I'm just trying to compare how it differs from one deployment strategy to the other one, right? So on premise, it is very simple. It has standalone deployment as the tag name. Okay, and you can mention your Mule home and Mule version, and it will deploy successfully. So coming back, there are scenarios where you might need to exclude or include the files during the build. That means you have a project, okay, where you have some files which are actually not necessary to include them during the build. Okay, or you want to include only those files during the build. So how to do that? So when specifying a resource directory, every file within that directory may not be used, correct? We have directory means project structure, right? So what will happen is, thus we may have to specify only the files that we want to include or we want to exclude them. So to include a resource, we only need a include element, and to exclude, we need only exclude element. So both the elements have to be under the build element, build tag. It should be under the build tag. So you have to always know the intention of the tags, okay, in which, so you cannot keep include and exclude out of build element. You have to always keep within build element, right? So for example, if you see how to exclude the binary files from a specific directory, there was a question I remember, I hardly remember, that they might have asked about a question in MCD level 2 about how to exclude the binary files. So you can go to, the plugin will prevent this binary files filtering without adding some exclude configurations. We are not using any exclude tag over here, right? For example, like if you want to exclude some binary files like jpg, png, or cert or pom, etc., here you can see in this particular form we are not using exclude tag anywhere. So you can see there is project, within project build, and then there is something called resources. That is very important. You have to mention these resources. For example, if you have this file extension like jpg or png files under source main resources, so you have to mention this resources tag. That is really important. Within resources, resource, and mention the directory where you want to, what are the files that you wanted to exclude or include. And filtering, you have to tell true. And then if you see inside the plugins command, within plugin and within configuration element, inside configuration elements, there is a tag called non-filtered file extension. Okay, so in this non-filtered file extension, you have to mention what kind of files you don't want to use or what you want to exclude. Okay, to have more understanding about this, you can always refer to this maven.apache.org. Okay, how to filter binary filterings. You can find more information on this, but I just wanted to show you on this. Okay, so huh coming to parent pom. So what is parent pom, right? So parent pom, maven parent pom, it's nothing related to mule, but we use in mule as well. So maven parent pom, or we call it as super pom, is used to structure the project to avoid redundancies or duplicate configurations by using what, the method of inheritance between pom files. For example, you know that most of our applications are having HTTP connector as a source, right? So for every application, what we do, we keep dragging and dropping HTTP connector. A dependency is added inside the Pom.xml, right? When you know that, and you have 10 applications, you will have 10 dependency in Pom.xml. But when you know that this is being used in multiple applications, why can't we have all the dependencies which are used in common? For example, common logging, common error handler, this kind of dependencies. If you feel that it is being used in multiple applications, what you can do is you can create a pom file with all these reused kind of http connector or whatever it is, and keep it. Okay, and invoke this parent pom in your actual applications. So for example, if you want to update the dependency of http or database connector from 1.2 to 1.3, if you want to do, if you are not using super pom, what it will happen, you have to go to 10 different applications, update the dependency manually, right? But what if we are putting this database connector inside a super pom? So there is no need for us to manually update. We are updating in the super pom the version only in one file, and whenever we are running our individual applications which includes this super pom, it will try to install the latest version whatever is there in super pom. So we don't have to make changes in our different applications, right? So this is really useful. I see most of the companies or organization, they use this concept, but some of them they don't because of various reasons, but it is always good to use parent form. So, and note that if any dependency or property, for example, you can also use the same database connector version in your super pom and even in the child pom in the actual application. If you are configuring in both parent and pom, please note that the values in the child pom will only take the priority, not in the super pom. For example, if your super pom is having 1.2 version, which is the latest, but your child pom means actual application is having 1.1, then when you run the application, it will always take 1.1 version but not in 1.2. That is really important to know. Okay, so basically this small tag, the parent tag is used in your real application, individual applications. So this parent pom, you have installed it somewhere, maven install, you create it and install it, and you will use this. So whatever changes you want to do with the connector configurations, you can change in the super pom, and you are just including this small snippet in your individual application. In that way, you don't have to do all this kind of redundancy work. That is the concept of parent pom. So again, you must have the parent pom installed in your repository to work with MuleSoft API in the studio. Okay, it should be there in some repository. It's not like it comes in a fly or somewhere, right? You have to install and put it somewhere in the repository. And you can also go through this article. This was beautifully explained how to work with the parent pom. So don't forget to check this, thing. So again, so what we can do is, let's create a sample project inside Anypoint Studio and check how pom.xml looks like. Okay, shall we? So I have already created a MuleSoft project. Okay, so this is the basic structure that I got here. Okay, so you can see, as I said, when we are creating a MuleSoft project, pom.xml, project is a root tag. Okay, I'll show you the structure also. So basically, everything this structure is created using Mule Maven plugin, right? And there is a pom.xml which has group ID and artifact ID. This is really important. Okay, and then the main important properties that we have discussed was build. Okay, this is the build phase which will help to create your jar file. Okay, so this build contains again plugins that I said before. Maven clean plugin we have seen in the second slide probably, right? So if you go here, so you can see Maven clean plugin. So this is what I am talking about. It will clean the project directories. And second is Mule Maven plugin, which is very important to do that. And as I said, like, there are dependency tags. Okay, all the connectors, for example, just a small example, we have like only two connectors now, so http and sockets. So you have two dependency, you are not actually manually adding it here. Whenever you are dragging and dropping, it automatically comes here. Okay, and you can see classifier is Mule plugin. Okay, all common used or common connectors, the classifier is always Mule plugin. That is really important, right? And you have different versions for it. Okay, so whenever you are dragging and dropping some other connector, for example, you want to add some module called email. Okay, now if you go here in Pom.xml, you can see Mule email connector is automatically downloaded and added. Okay, this is how it happens, right? That is why Mule is very easy, like you don't have to do much work. Okay, and repositories, as I said, this is the place where you get all these connectors. So where are these HTTP connector, socket connector, email connector coming from? They are coming from this Anypoint exchange. If you want to see that as well, uh, so if you want to see that, you can go to anypoint.mulesoft.com. Okay, so if I go to this, so here if you go to the exchange, you can say like type, right, connectors, or for example, email connector. So there are many email connectors are in here, for example, or HTTP connector, right? So HTTP connector is there, for example, and you can download this. So this is where we are getting from. Okay, Anypoint exchange, that's what I'm trying to show in this particular studio. Okay, so repositories, these all connectors will go. So basically when what build will do is, so as I said, like Maven will collect all the information. When we start building a application, it will start building and check for the repositories, then download the dependencies from them. Okay, I said aside plugin repositories and repositories one and the same. There is no much difference in it. Okay, and we were talking about the deployments, if you remember correctly, right? For example, if you want to download your this if you want to deploy your application into CloudHub 1.0, what you need to do is, that there is already a called plugin tag, right? So what you have to do is, the only thing you need to do is copy this configuration and put it inside the plugin, or you can create multiple plugins. So okay, I will write plugin, and here you can mention your configuration details. All right, so now this will help us to deploy in the CloudHub 1.0. Likewise, if you go here, give me 1 second. I don't need all the CloudHub, I just need configuration tag. You cannot have two configuration tabs. Okay, you cannot have two configurations tab. Okay, place it. You can see this is used for CloudHub 2 deployments, and as I said, this secure properties is very important, and you need to mention all these details. How you mention these details, you can use, like you can pass as an arguments. Your CI/CD is already set up, right? There you can pass all those values, right? So this is how basically it looks like, the prompt. And please remember that whenever using Mule Maven plugin, this is really important. If you are not using extensions equal to true, then it will not help to build the application. This is very important. So I'll tell you a bit more about it. So if extension true is not present, this tag is not present, what will happen? The plugin does not work. The Mule Maven plugin does not work. This is really important. Okay. If you are going to be interviewed by me, I will ask this question for sure. Right. So this is really important. So this is for today, and this is the first topic for MuleSoft advanced users, and you will be, I know it's quite long, but I hope this information is useful for you, and I will come up with another topic for advanced user. Hope you like it. Thank you.